he had just seen 3 bodies, dead, mangled, torn to pieces. He started to say something loud and was shushed. And then he said, I'm telling you, man, a Bigfoot killed those guys.
I'm so excited for this.
Dun, dun, dun. This is Jen.
This is Becky.
And this is Too Close to Home. And that was David Holthouse from Sasquatch on Hulu. And today we're going to be talking about Bigfoot and the Emerald Triangle.
Yay!
So, of course, let me go ahead and knock these sources out of the way. Sasquatch from Hulu is really where this story was centered around, but there's obviously other things we're going to talk about. Wikipedia, California Adventure District, BBC, Cash Crop by Ray Raphael, Humboldt by Emily Brady, National Forest Foundation, Sasquatch Detective, Southern-styled sweet teas, Bigfoot and Native American folklore, a deep dive into a cultural legacy. The History Channel, nichecanada.org, North California Indian Development Castle. Castle? I'm going to have to check that reference later. University of Arizona, Arizona State Museum, Oregon Historical Society's Oregon Encyclopedia, The Reflector, the Lake County Record Bee, Sasquatch, Legend Meets Science by Jeff Meldrum, The Cannabis Trail, and the Indigenous Peoples website. As we all know, we love us some Bigfoot. So when I saw this limited series documentary on Sasquatch possibly murdering weed farmers in the Emerald Triangle, it caught my attention real quick.
Of course it did.
For those who don't know, the Emerald Triangle is an area in Northern California comprised of 3 northern counties who are known for making some of the finest, high-quality Mary Jane in the world. The holy land of OG Kush and the Pineapple Express is known for more than ganja. It's known to have a very high frequency of Bigfoot sightings since it lies in his swath of his Pacific Northwest territory. We haven't written about Bigfoot himself, actually. We've written about all the variants of His Highness. So let's start from the beginning, before the murders, before the weed, and talk about our bestie Bigfoot and his origins in Northern California.
I have a Bigfoot in my yard. He just appears sometimes, leaves his little footprints.
Just a little for you later. So
I call him Sassy.
You know how many times I wrote Sassy in this?
Oh, see?
Where does Bigfoot come from? Well, I believe, like humans, there are diverse types of Sasquatch all over the world. One of the highest concentrations of the North American Sasquatch sightings comes from the Pacific Northwest and, of course, North California. And it goes back to the beginning of time when the only inhabitants were Indigenous Americans. I want to preface this that while Indigenous are all native to the land, they aren't a corporation with across-the-board rules. There are core similarities and, of course, several distinctions from region to region, tribe to tribe. That means their beliefs and approaches varied. I may get some of this wrong, but no, I'm doing my best to educate you as factually as I can, keeping it simple at the same time.
And respectfully.
Respectfully. I'll put respect on it. To begin, before there was the United States, it was an untouched land made by the Creator. In the pre-Columbian era, also known as the no-contact era, North California was home to at least 300,000 people prior to European colonization. In fact, there's evidence that human occupation in California that goes back as far as 19,000 years ago. So their history is so long and deep that their beliefs are deeply rooted in their creation and its relation to the land. Some tribes believe humans have more a primordial emergence, with us having come from the ground, from caves and deep springs, which makes sense why they give a higher amount of religious respect to the land. I think we all remember that commercial from the 70s of the little Indian crying at the edge of the forest, but he wasn't really an Indian man. He was Italian. I don't know if anybody knows that.
Well, I don't know any of what you're talking about, so that's all educational to me. But on a completely side note that the people listening to this may not care about, the last time that I recorded, I was like, why do I use my hands so much when I'm in here recording and no one can see me? I feel like an idiot, but I can't help it. And I'm watching you today, and you do the same thing. So I feel good. I feel better about
put
myself.
on the show for you, baby.
Okay, that's what I was doing too. And for Jimmy.
I don't know if you know this, but I do my hand gestures in the mirror. No, I don't really, but... In fact, I probably should read these way more than I do before I
was going to say, if you practice these before we record, just so you know, I'm out here freeballing it, man. I just come raw.
I have tried. I have a hard time reading my own writing. I'm like, I know this. I made it. Okay. It's not interesting anymore because I'm the one relaying it.
That's why you come across errors, because after I read it 4 times as I'm writing it, I start jumping quickly through it, and that's how I miss the stuff. And then when I get here live, I just,
I have to send it to Jimmy. I'm like, does it sound coherent? Does it sound like I know what I'm
I
talking
make
about?
JJ be surprised when he hears it because he listens to them as he drives around. And now that he doesn't come to any of the recordings, he'll be like, oh my God. He was like, during this one, Jennifer was hilarious when she was talking about the beaver scissoring. He was like, you guys are ridiculous.
After you told me that, I had to go back and listen to that episode just for that. I was like, you know what? That just came right off the cuff.
So anyway, back to Bigfoot. Sorry. Side story there.
Well needed. Others believe that a creator or creators who could be human or animal as the ones who put us on this mortal coil. Regardless, their origins are not as simple as Mayflower entrances like Europeans, and their relationships with Bigfoot are not simple either. There are at least 500 distinct tribes or groups there prior to contact from Europeans, and all of them roamed California's deep redwood forest, highly attuned to the land. So it's no wonder that they had different interactions with Bigfoot, although they could differ wildly in behavior and characteristic from region to region. One example of their intertwined existence is said to be at Painted Rock. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
I had never actually.
You never heard of Painted Rock?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
It is an archaeological and sacred site of the Yokuts at the Tule River Indian tribe of the Tule River Reservation in Tulare County, California. There are petroglyphs of what appears to be the Bigfoot family that are over 1,000 years old.
I did not know that part.
Mm-hmm. And petroglyphs are like a fun way for rock carvings. Like they use rock to dig it out. That was really scientific, wasn't it?
It really was. Might have to break it down next time so people understand.
I can't. I mean, listen, I went to no college for this, okay? I don't know if I can keep up. They believe that a hairy man was, which is featured in this whole petroglyph, was good in that he ate the animals that hunted people, but they did warn their children to steer clear of the creek at night lest they cross paths with him.
So he was a helper.
Yeah.
A protector in a sense.
Bigfoot folklore amongst indigenous tribes is not just spoken of in North California, but all over North America. Many tribes spoke of the local hairy ape creatures with some differing characteristics, but Bigfoot-like at the core. And so the Cherokee had the tales of the Sul Kalu in the Appalachians, who were believed to be Bigfoot-like. You had the Iroquois. They had tales of Otniyarha.
Excellent. That is exactly how it's said.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
It means stone giant in Iroquois, and it is describing something that was covered in hair but had rock hard skin. That's what Jimmy is.
That's JJ.
Good vibe. The Lumi of the Pacific Northwest talked about Tismequez, a tribe of Yeti-like white hair-covered peoples. The Chinookawa of Oregon talked about Skookums, a race of cannibalistic men reportedly living at the peak of Mount St. Helens. But there are many different variations of Skookums, and they can come in different forms as well. The Ojibwe also had the Rougarou, which our girl has reported on. It is similar to werewolf in some lore, but also believed to appear in times of danger. The Seminole had the SD Jap Jockey, which means hairy man.
Excellent.
The Tishimian people of British Columbia's coast had the Baush Abawez, which translates to an ape-like creature that imitates man. And one of my favorite versions has a story told by a storyteller from the Warm Springs tribes in Washington. There were hunters going into the forest and not returning, so the elders asked Coyote to find out what was happening. He came across Bigfoot, who admitted, yeah, I ate him. So Coyote was like, all right, how about this? Let's have a contest to see who's more powerful. Loser has to stop eating people and retreat from the farthest of the woods and live a life of solitude. But they had to close their eyes to compete, right? And what they were going to do is close their eyes and vomit up everything they had eaten. And when Bigfoot said, yeah, bet, let's do this, they all threw up. The Coyote took the food from the Bigfoot side and put it on his side and won. And Bigfoot was like, you know what? It just be like that sometimes. And that's why Bigfoot's in the middle of the forest.
Okay, excellent. Is that a direct quote from the Bigfoot?
Yeah, direct quote.
Okay, I love it. You know, I like historical knowledge. So, okay.
We like to keep it factual. You know, facts on facts on facts.
He was like, to be like that sometimes. And then many, many thousands of years later, these rappers stole his words and be singing them.
I mean, dog.
And these little churns
These little
running around talking like that. Stealing all from Bigfoot.
It's so wonderful that he has influenced us in the way he has.
It is. It is.
So depending on the region and the folklore of Bigfoot-like creatures, they could either be violent and love to kidnap people, specifically children, to stories of being...
Fuck them kids.
Fuck them. To stories of Bigfoot being a brother of the forest, a protector of humans living a quiet and unobtrusive life hidden in the woods, almost like a guardian.
That's my Bigfoot.
Guardian angel.
And he's just up there trying to live his best life in the woods without all these motherfucking people around. And you know what? That's what I want to do when I retire. So I'm here for it. Leave him alone. Let him do him. He's a beautiful, peaceful, harmonious creature.
So one of the distinct differences I feel between the indigenous folklore and, let's say, the hippies in NorCal in the 1960s is the way that it feels spiritual and destined versus some long-distant hominid that had never evolved. The legend of Bigfoot is actually based somewhat in reality, as chimpanzees have been known to steal infants. While not common, it's...
First of all, who's just leaving their children out here around chimpanzees to get stole?
Okay, this is... We're going to be talking about Africa.
Oh,
That's where all this happens.
Okay. I thought we were talking about North Cal still.
I don't know if you've seen The Lion King, but everybody lives together.
I'm like, I know that Californians are a little bit more liberal, but I don't think they just leave their babies laying around.
You know, they're like, I think it's Norwegians or Swedish. Or
leave them outside.
They leave them outside in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's good for them.
Are you
Builds
sure?
immunity.
Are you sure you're not just a little angry because you're not getting sleep?
Builds immunity. It's better than vaccines for sure.
For sure. Sorry, hold on. That was RFK came.
I mean, their babies ain't dying, so they must be doing something right.
Must be.
To you boo-boos.
So while not common, it does happen, like in the case of a Ugandan infant being taken and later found dead. It comes from a combination of things like loss of habitat and competition for resources to losing their natural fear of humans. Chimpanzees are intelligent creatures and they can associate humans with food. So there are cases of chimpanzees taking babies and holding them hostage just for food. And even sometimes just taking them because they're curious about the evolved versions of themselves.
You know, I don't want to say I'm an expert or anything, but Emma and I have watched a lot of episodes of Secrets of the Zoo. And they've not had any problems with the chimpanzees trying to eat them and mistake them for food.
I did have a chimpanzee throw shit at me one time.
Yes, I don't like the chimpanzees being disrespected like this.
No.
And FYI, a silverback will beat all 100 men.
So to add an extra panache of terror, there's also indigenous stories about women being abducted and raped. In Jeff Meldrum's book, he wrote about a Salish elderly woman who claimed her grandmother had been taken by squeenoos.
First of all, nobody wants her, but go ahead.
I love how you feel the same way I do. Like, this is like a frame story. Poor innocent Bigfoot. And so...
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I respect the victim. I'm not being...
So, the woman's grandmother was abducted by the squeenoos. Okay. And she was...
chimpanzees, correct?
No, this was the Bigfoots.
Oh, the Bigfoot. So now you're disrespecting Sassy. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going back to Sassy now. Okay. She was a Salish indigenous woman. And so she was able to escape, but not before being raped. And she would later give birth to a deformed and stillborn child. Honestly, it could have been... listen, I'm all about Sasquatch. You know I believe in it. But that could have just been somebody making up a story, okay?
It sounds like someone was stepping out on their husband and they needed to explain why they was pregnant.
And unfortunately, the baby didn't make it and might have had some genetic defects, you know?
Right. That was back in the
day.
Could
have been hydrocephaly. Who knows?
There wasn't a lot of prenatal care then.
No. Nobody was taken there. What is that one thing that you have to take
for
pregnancy?
Prenatal vitamins?
No. There's a particular one that helps prevent
what?
Folic acid. There we go.
Okay. I need a little bit more, Jennifer.
Listen, those gears were really working hard up here.
They were. I saw them. I saw the smoke coming out of your ears.
It was so hard. I had to study before we came in here.
Are those new glasses, by the way?
They are. Okay. Thank you.
They look wonderful.
So the legend also has a kernel of truth, as stated by Dr. Herman Rigyason. The red ape behaves like a classic satyr. On first encounter with a female human or orang, an attempt at rape is a fully normal way of advertisement for orangutan male wanting to establish a relationship. Barut Galikas, a Canadian anthropologist and primatologist, spoke of an instance of a female researcher being assaulted by an orang and being unable to stop the culmination of the act due to the ape's crazy strength.
So he understood that he needed to take her pants off and everything.
Apparently.
Okay. Just making sure I understand all of the facts.
Even Julia Roberts, she was filming a documentary on orangutan conservation. She had a non-consensual hug that was like they had to pull not hug like a nice sweet hug, like he was trying to hump her and everything, I guess, and they had a hard time pulling the orangutan off of Julia Roberts.
That makes sense, okay? Like
he must have been a fan of Pretty Woman. I mean, are you really going to sit there and tell me that orangutan wasn't just a fan?
I totally agree that they might start dry humping. Dogs do it too. But when you start telling me the orangutans start disrobing them and taking their jeans off and understanding where their vajayjay is, I need you to go sit down somewhere because I can't have a conversation with you. They're smart, but I'm not sure they're that smart. Anyway, proceed. Becky's little insight that nobody asked for nor wants.
I asked for it, and I always want it.
Thank you.
While some of the folklore may be rooted in nature, the humanity of Bigfoot is just as prominent, like in the case of the Yokut tribe stories. They have a pictograph on painted rock that we spoke of earlier that has the Sasquatch family, and it shows the creation of Sasquatch and the creation of humans. And so it features humans and a slurry of animals like coyotes, eagles, bear, but the largest is of that hairy man. The story is that when creating humans, all the animals had opinions and thoughts on what they should look and act like, and the hairy man said, well, they should walk upright on 2 feet like me. The sad thing is, when humans were created and they saw the hairy man, they would flee in fear. So the pictograph shows lines coming down from his eyes, denoting tears, breaking a Bigfoot's heart.
That is heartbreaking.
And as the humans would take up space and displace animals, each animal becomes resigned to a restricted niche, with the hairy man saying, I'll go live amongst the sequoias in solitude and only come out at night when humans are asleep.
And I want you to think about that for a minute. We've been to the sequoias.
Mm-hmm.
They're beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Peaceful. We didn't want to leave.
I didn't want to. Yeah, no. And
I like the way that he was like, you know what, guys? I'll do you a favor. I'll go up there in the beautiful woods by myself.
I'll hang out with the banana slugs and by the little streams and enjoy that beautiful, nice little mist.
I'm not enjoying anything. I'm taking one for the team.
It's so hard out here.
It is. I'm going to take one for the team, y'all.
Do you know what this humidity is going to do to my hair? Bigfoot's native history is long and his relationship with the indigenous close, but his relationship with the whites and the reclusivity is spoken of by Gail Highpine of the Kootenai tribe. The existence of Bigfoot is taken for granted throughout Native North America, and so are his powerful psychic abilities.
Okay.
I can't count the number of times I've heard elder Indian people say that Bigfoot knows when humans are searching for him, and that he chooses when and to whom to make an appearance, and that his psychic powers account for his ability to elude the white man's efforts to capture him or hunt him down. In Indian culture, the entire natural world, the animals, the plants, the rivers, the stars, is seen as family, and Bigfoot is seen as one of our close relatives, the great elder brother.
This would make sense that he picks and chooses because he always picks the most non-believable people.
Oh, absolutely. and I do recommend everybody watches Sasquatch on Hulu. It's hysterical because they have a lot of Bigfooters and they have a lot of people who are like old hippies from the 60s. And just those two categories alone,
I'm here for.
Beautiful characters, okay? And while the legend of Bigfoot has not changed, it has become rather more commercialized and mainstream. The core remains the same, though. A hairy, ape-like bipedal stinky man whose temperament could vary, but with the feel of a 20th century newsstand headline. So you have like your skunk ape in Florida, whose scent is terrifying, the child kidnapping wood booger of Virginia, the hermited old man of the mountain in West Virginia, and the folk monster in Arkansas. You did the folk monster, didn't you?
I don't think so.
It's the Foucke folk. Oh, that was part of the big. I did that. I mean, Jimmy did that.
Jimmy, stop trying to take her shine.
He really do, though. He really do. Thank you for seeing me.
You're welcome.
Even President Theodore Roosevelt would write an account of a mountain man named Bauman who spoke about a foul-smelling, hairy bipedal creature who stalked him, ransacked his beaver trapping camp, and later broke his hunting companion's neck.
Did he?
I don't know, Theodore. I mean, we hear it too close to home. Like to think the more variations of Bigfoot, the better. We're equal opportunity Sasquatch enthusiasts, if you will, but I digress. Back to the indigenous origins. It would be the Salish people of the Pacific Northwest who called Bigfoot Sasquatch, meaning wild man or hairy man. This verbiage would be picked up phonetically by J.W. Burns, who would coin the term Sasquatch. Nobody should be surprised that J.W. Burns is a white man. Okay? He's stealing from the Indians.
Shocked.
Old J.W., he was employed as a teacher on the British Columbian Chehalis Indian Reserve in the 1920s and 30s when he would write an infamous article in 1929, quote, introducing British Columbia's hairy giants, a collection of strange talks about British Columbia's wild men as told by those who say they have seen them, which is inherently a superfluously long title.
Very long.
I say that because
Bigfoot,
it was...
So he believes Bigfoot is a man. Because I don't think he's a man.
He is...
Or is he just...
He's just relating the stories he's been told.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So he ain't seen shit.
Nothing. Just
Sasquatch said, I think this
off.
motherfucker's looking for me. And I say, no, thank you.
He's just stealing other people's ideas and cultures and stories and making money off them?
He's putting his invisibility cloak on. Yes.
Got it. Understood.
Sorry.
Same as it's been fucking going on for thousands of years. Just making sure we were staying true to us.
And if you could be anything, be true to yourself.
100%.
I say that it was later found that he took many of the stories and did not give credit to the original authors.
What?
Mm-hmm. A white man.
A white man would never.
Especially in case that they were indigenous, meaning he appropriated their history as many a white man in history has, unfortunately. Damn it.
Facts on facts.
Facts on facts, dog. In the article, he would speak to an indigenous man with an anglicized name of Peter Williams, which, much like how he anglicized Sasquatch from the Salish, where he spoke about his own encounter with Sasquatch. I was startled to see what I took at first sight to be a huge bear crouched upon a boulder 20 or 30 feet away. I raised my rifle to shoot, but as I did, the creature stood up and let out a piercing yell. It was a man, a giant, no less than 6 1/2 feet in height and covered in hair. He was in a rage. I never ran so fast before or since.
So, once again, a white man sees somebody strange and tries to shoot him? That didn't happen.
Oh, no, this was a Native American.
Oh, okay.
But he had been, like, so they had the reservation schools and everything, like, they were trying to teach the...
No, he was doing exactly what he should. He was a Native American and people on his land. They were probably trying to steal it.
No, but I was talking about his anglicized name. That he'd probably been through the reservation system and everything. Like
that's why I thought it was a white guy.
Yes.
Okay. That's right. You said
his real name is not Peter Williams. Just like...
No, I'm sure it's not.
I'm sure when you get a call from a guy who probably is in New Delhi, his name is also not Peter Williams.
No. When he's like, this is Steve, I'm like, is
it Steve? Is that... Get named after your daddy? Much to his surprise, the tribe elders did not want to publicize the story or have it gain any attention. This is talking about JW. Because they were like, whoa. Time out. Shut the fuck up. Why are you talking about this? This is our business.
Also, we don't need anybody coming onto our land to find him. So let's just put a pin in that. Leave that as a story we tell around the fire. Exactly. Let's not tell anybody else.
To the Salish, they felt that Bigfoot was more or less a wild human. A creature who was less wild than nature, but more wild than human, and needed protecting too. So once we hit the 20th century, more sightings would occur in the Pacific Northwest. And with those sightings comes with the animosity of validating sightings. One of my favorite source material for this was written by Jeff Meldrum, which is the book I gave Becky today. Yay. It takes a more scientific approach to believing in Bigfoot.
Oh, that's my jam.
Mm-hmm. To believe denotes believing without evidence, without confirmation, blind faith. That isn't scientific. That is more religious and, while respectable, not applicable. Sasquatch is a very possible cryptid that we have strong evidence of, with the exception of the creature itself. Meldrum does pointedly say that skeptics often parade as scientists and are quick to paint things as a hoax without really taking in those factors. The way he presents information isn't in a Fox News influential way, but as a factual, without pointing one way or another, so you can make your own deductions. Of course, many scientists rebuke his views and treat Bigfoot and cryptozoology as a pseudoscience. Is that how you say it? Pseudoscience?
I say pseudo.
Pseudo! That's it. I was like, no, that's not right. I'm not an anthropologist or anything. No surprise there. But I do know I don't want to live in a world where Bigfoot is not a possibility.
Me neither.
While reading his book, I specifically realized how much of these stories or Bigfoot sightings have been told with missing or false information. I'm talking about famous stories that we've heard. There are even times where stories have been inflated, which is just as awful as a practice, and I appreciate his willingness to present everything and the salt to boot. So that being said, let's talk about some of the most famous encounters with our brother of the forest, with all the nuances to make your own decisions on whether Biggie Feats is a creature of fact or fiction.
Can I just say, this has nothing to do with the story, but the fact that you have your woods walking stick next to you while you tell this story, fucking chef's kiss.
This comes from the
I feel like
Appalachians.
you just came out of the woods from writing this.
It's called The Tennessee Hiker.
And why you have that right beside you while you tell this? Fucking beautiful. Paints a picture, my friend.
For all this hiking I don't do.
Carry on. You know, I just like to point out random odd things throughout the day. Makes life more interesting.
It does. So one of the first accounts of a Sassy attack was in the Pacific Northwest. Taking place in 1924, the Oregonian reported miners on St. Helens who claimed to have been attacked by giant apes. It would be such a famous event that they named the gorge Ape Canyon. The legend goes that a group of gold prospectors were attacked in their camp by monsters who were 7 feet tall after shooting one in the wilderness. That's why you don't fucking shoot.
They shot one. He went home, told his friends. They came back to get a motherfucker.
Not today. Seems like a case of Bigfoot justice, as they came with big rocks ready to throw them at the men.
Good for them.
This has also been highly disputed, as 14-inch tracks left could easily have been faked. And of course, there wasn't any other evidence than rocks by a shack at the time. But again, open-minded, okay? Regardless.
No, I feel like they are telling the truth because you don't want to draw a bunch of people to your gold mine.
No, you definitely don't.
So, facts on facts.
That's a really good point. See, that's
what you keep me around
That's why
for.
you're a doctor of cryptozoology.
Exactly. Exactly.
The more you know.
It applies all the time with us.
It really do. Regardless, the legend persists despite Ape Canyon being heavily impacted by the 1980s Mount St. Helens eruption. Mark Mersell is one of those who believe that this is a real event, as he has dedicated time and research into the legend, even locating the site of the original cabin. He would end up spending hours, both during the day and night, in the gorge looking at original cabin and heard, quote, "It sounded like 4 or 5 individuals chattering and speaking gibberish with each other along the ridge. It went on all night, and it was something I'd never heard before." He and the miners were not the only ones to experience something in the area. There were local indigenous tribes who had long known history of seeing a 7-foot-tall creature on 2 feet. There were even images or likenesses painted on their baskets. He went through records and found that despite it seeming to be a hoax, there were other factors that could prove the story. Firstly, the mine was successful, but after the event happened, they abandoned it, which was not something a miner would do in those times. Okay?
See?
It was highly lucrative and had reached 75 feet while actively in use. And all the miners maintained their stories, even on their deathbeds. One of the miners, Leroy Smith, refused to talk about it ever again. Another miner, Marion Smith, said he didn't care how much gold was in the mine. He wasn't going back.
See?
And
you're not abandoning that for a fake
but
story.
I know a prospector loves some gold.
Right? I love some gold, and I'm not a prospector.
Right? I'm not
but
even
if
Mr.
you
T.
told me I could go up to that cave and walk in a little bit and get some gold, say less.
Say less. It would be in 1958 that the Bigfoot story would gain more modern traction in Humboldt County, California, just a few years before it would be transformed by the Back to the Land hippie movement of the 1960s. Around the late 1940s, post-World War II, veterans who had been stationed in California returned with their families to settle as there was a huge industrial boom. With the boom, these families ventured into Northern California's untouched land, and so did the modern world, with the need for roads and other infrastructure. And what it is like all these people had been stationed in California and they were like, fuck yeah, the temperature is great out here. And I'd be like, dog, I would have been the same. It's hot. It's hot in Texas.
It's not the heat, it's the humidity.
I'm going to tell you, it's been killing me lately. One such road crew belonged to Ray Wallace's company. Jerry Crew, a bulldozer operator at Ray's company, was working a job in Bluff Creek when he found a set of 16-inch long human-like prints in the mud. He took an outline of the foot with a cardboard and he took it to the local taxidermist and tracker, Bob Titmus.
Sounds like he knows what he's doing.
He wasn't familiar with the print, actually, and he said, here, take some plaster and I want you to go cast the footprint so we can get a more in-depth visual. Ray's brother, Shorty, would report that he had seen where there's inexplicable reasoning that these 50-gallon drums had been moved around, 700-pound spare construction tires had been moved around without anybody knowing how they had been moved, and large steel culverts having seemingly been tossed around in that area. So they're like, oh, there was already some weird shit happening. Old Bob Titmus would find, I just love his name, would report finding a humongous bundle of wire on a steep incline on the mountain when tracking for the creature. Even if one could move the huge bundle, why, there in the middle of the woods, seemingly further away from civilization, would you put it there? Like, why? Doesn't make sense. Jerry decided he should write the local paper about this possible relative of the Himalayan Yeti. He met Andrew Gonzoli, who was thrilled to hear about it, as I would be as well.
Same.
Andrew thought this would be a lovely and fun Sunday morning paper piece and went out to make plaster casts with the rest of the guys. So on October 6, 1958, Jerry would be on the front of the paper holding one of the casts, and the story would ignite a flurry of international interest. Locals, including law enforcement, were skeptical as Ray Wallace had been known to play pranks, though.
That's when your past comes to bite you in the ass.
Exactly. But the good news is he had an alibi. He was not even in the region. He was at a totally different job site. Some thought he did it to discourage thieves, as it had become an issue. And even if it was to discourage thieves, how would they even notice the footprints at night? Then you add the fact that it was hella remote. It took an hour of driving precarious mountain roads, so some men even stayed on the site, where there was usually someone at all times. So if it was a hoax, wouldn't they be sure that the men saw the Bigfoot?
True.
Especially if they'd been there the whole time. Some even said this is because he had fallen behind on the job and used Bigfoot as an excuse not to incur contractual penalties. Except they lost $40,000 on this particular job, so why would somebody fuck themselves so badly in their business because of a hoax?
That's true. Once again, money speaks.
And at the time, people had been hearing about the Yeti in the Himalayas, but there wasn't anything hugely outside of indigenous and local circles that would have known about these things. So it's how can we make this? How would you even know it was a profitable hoax?
Yeah.
While Ray Wallace would be known for his Bigfoot business of selling cast and Bigfoot hair, he remained steadfast to the day he died that the cast in 1958 was real. His family, however, announced after his passing that it had all been a huge hoax with him using wooden feet carved by Rant Mullins. The Rant conclusion was hardly news, as he had confessed to creating Bigfoot legend as a young forest ranger with a penchant for pranks. He had carved feet and even sold a pair to Ray Wallace, who would use them to recreate the tracks, supposedly. However, if you look at Rant's feet, quote unquote, you notice that they're completely block-shaped. They're not normal feet, okay? It's like Minecraft feet. They were also only 15 inches, and Jerry Crew's cast was actually 17 inches long and 7 inches wide. So it wasn't even the same. Ray's family insisted that he had donned the big feet, as well as many a nephew, to place the fake Bigfoot prints all over the Northwest. Except the family wouldn't provide the feet. Where are they? Where's the evidence? And then they said, okay, well, let's replicate this. So they got the wooden feet and they put it on this guy, and snowshoe style, and they got a big truck. And so they would drive the truck and the guy would hold onto the tail band and walk to help lift, except it was so muddy, it would just suck the shoe down and hold it. So he couldn't even give a good foot mark or even a track, a long track. It would be
that's what I was thinking. You wouldn't be able to put them on and walk a long enough stride to make it believable.
And then because he was having such a hard time getting his feet in and out the mud, There was not like defined
Solid
footprints.
prints. Yeah.
What I believe really happened was that there was a Bigfoot on the job site, and the tension and excitement from it launched Ray Wallace into a world of frauds and forgeries. Many of his print casts are obviously fake just by looking at how unnatural the steps are and how they don't seem to have flexed around things in the path like rocks and sticks like a normal foot would have. Despite all this, Ray's family stays steadfast in their claims, as said in an article in the Seattle Times. Ray L. Wallace was Bigfoot. The reality is, Bigfoot just died. His son would also say that he never explicitly stated he faked any footprints than a set to ward off the hunters. Apparently, Ray had wanted to protect Bigfoot and created fake prints to keep the real Bigfoot safe, because he'd also apparently guarded a cave full of gold that Ray wanted to find. He never found it.
Spoiler.
One of the most important pieces of North California's Bigfoot history, and arguably of all Sasquatch lore, is of the Patterson-Gimlin film. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
The name might evade you, but the clip will not. It's the infamous color footage of a female Bigfoot walking across a clearing.
Yes, I've seen that before. Now that I should know the name of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people don't. Like, damn, YouTube, get your shit together. Okay, sorry. I have seen it, but I never really looked deeper into it because I was always under the impression that had been debunked. Had you? Did you know much about it?
I've heard so many different things about it, but I choose to believe so.
There you go. That's the way I believe. Let's start with the first of the duo, Roger Patterson. Starting out as a rodeo rider, Patterson quickly pivoted to Sasquatch hunting after reading an article in 1959 about North California's possible abdominal snowman. He would dive in and self-publish his own encyclopedic Abdominal Snowman legend come to life in 1961. All income from that he funneled into a search fund that included donations for his self-founded Northwest Research Foundation. Although the funds would run low as time went on, and the investors dropped out due to the lack of producing a Bigfoot. Patterson never gave up, though. He reached out to fellow rodeo rider Bob Gimlin with the hope to make a docudrama about two cowboys being led by an old miner and an Indian tracker on a quest to find Bigfoot. So Bob was a rancher and a rodeo rider that Patterson had known for years. He was skeptical about Bigfoot, but open enough to say, why not? You know what I mean? Let's give it a shot. He also had seen Roger's cast as quote-unquote evidence, and although he doubted their authenticity, he wanted to be open-minded about it. The purpose of the film was to make more money to continue Patterson's expedition in finding Bigfoot, so the two spent a lot of time on horseback in North California, hoping to stumble across him in spots he had been seen before. Others would report sightings and prints to Patterson, knowing he would often film the prints for the documentary. One day, he got a tip of some fresh prints on Blue Creek Mountain and set off. Unfortunately, it had rained, so the tracks were indiscernible in the mud, but they decided to make a base camp there and basically hope for the best since there had been recent activity. And this would go on for a few weeks, riding together through the woods. You know, Patterson had his camera on standby in his saddlebag. It was funny because he would practice it, like whiplash. Take it out. Get ready.
Oh, yeah. You told me about that.
And he had like one strap clipped, the other strap unclipped at all times, ready to catch it.
I'm here for it.
On October 20th, they were riding upstream on Bluff Creek a little after 1 in the afternoon when they came to an overturned tree with a large root system at the turn of the creek. As they came around, they saw a huge log jam left over from a previous flood when they spotted a figure behind it, crouching, then standing. Patterson, of course, grabbed his camera and jumped off the horse, rushing towards the figure, hollering, "Cover me!" Like Bigfoot had a Uzi or something. Patterson, his horse, and his pack horse, they ran off, leaving Gimlin just on his horse. Gimlin would descend from his horse, grabbing his gun from his scabbard, but he didn't want to lose visual of the Sasquatch. He knew that if he had to take a shot, he would have a better shot on ground since it was steady. He never had intentions to shoot Bigfoot, saying, "We talked about it, but decided unless it was necessary, we should never shoot. In other words, unless it was violent or attempted to attack us." And I'm like, you know what? I'm with you on that, Gimlin.
Thank you.
Self-defense, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The Sasquatch would do its famous head turn and walk into the forest while Patterson and Gimlin reeled from seeing it. At first, they thought It was about 6 foot tall, 250, 300 pounds. But once they took into consideration the surroundings, the horse size, and relatedness, it was closer to 9 feet in height. The weight was much more than the 250 pounds based on the depth of the prints. They looked at their horse prints, each horse would weigh about 1,200 to 1,300 pounds. So he figured the distributed weight would be about 300 to 400 pounds on each foot. And it was not as deep as the Bigfoot. So they were estimating he probably was closer to the 500 range. And I'm like, are you shaming this man? Don't shame Bigfoot, okay?
Well, he was
beautiful.
9 foot. So 500,
Sounds right.
Yeah. It spaces out nicely. Good BMI.
There you go. Patterson, of course, visited the zoo after to study apes about their weights and found that they weighed more than they looked often. Probably because they were hella stacked, dude. I don't know if you've ever seen a bald chimp, but apes are fucking ripped and muscle weighs more than fat. Ipso facto, that bitch is heavy.
Just like a silverback would. All you men thinking about, find one.
Exactly. Gimlin was familiar with livestock and animal husbandry, and he would speak about how despite being covered in hair, it was spread enough that you could see the musculature underneath and see the muscles contract with moving. So homie didn't need steroids. He was just naturally ripped. He would speak on the details of the face. Quote, the face would have a flat type nose. The lips, I can't really remember what the lips looked like, except that it did have lips and we could see teeth. The eyes were huge, but not too big round eyes. Bless you. Like a horse or cow, but there were large eyes. The hair on the face was short. There wasn't a whole lot of hair around his cheeks and alongside his face. The best I can remember is the face didn't have a whole lot of hair on it. Eventually,
He had just shaved.
5 o'clock shadow. Eventually, the creature would just mosey on its way into the woods, and Gimlin wanted to follow because he was still on his horse. But Patterson's like, bro, I ain't got a horse. Don't leave me behind.
And he's cool, but you go into his home.
Yeah.
Different story homes.
He walked away for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So they tracked down the missing horses, tied them up, and then went in search of Sassy. Following its tracks another half of a mile, they came more and more scuffed in the gravel and increased in 68 to 72 inches in stride, suggesting that it might have broken into a run when it was out of sight. Patterson was so ready to see if they got anything on film and wanted to plaster cast the prints, so they stopped tracking and went back to the river. He would tell Kimlin, I don't know, Bob. I'm not sure if I got any footage at all. I fell down, got relocated, then got relocated again. Then I ran out of film. And this is like 1963. So like,
yeah. You young kids don't know about when you had to carry film on you.
And you just guesstimating what you got, They poured plaster into 2 prints, a right and a left. And seeing as it was nearly dark, they tied up the horses and got in the truck and drove over to Oric and down to Eureka, where Roger would ship the film for development. Al Hodgson, a local proprietor who was very vested in Bigfoot sightings, received a call from the normally calm Patterson stating, I got a picture of the son of a buck. He was so surprised at the excitement, he would tell his wife, either he saw it or he's on LSD. But regardless, he helped arrange tracking dogs to come down to Bluff Creek and investigate and track it down. However, the ability to track it would be lost with the morning rain. The rain would turn to downpours, destroying all but a few prints that they were able to cover to preserve. It got so bad, it took a while for them to find a safe way to the highway from the mudslides and the treacherous roads, just from the crazy amount of rain. Eventually, the time came where they would view the footage, and while they were disappointed they didn't catch more, they were thrilled at what they did catch, and set out to show the world Bigfoot. At first, they started on their local level, and while they were met with interest, many remained skeptical and brushed it off, saying that they were not willing to risk their careers, so more substantial proof came in the form of bones or a skull. And while regional excitement seemed to fizz out, Life magazine had gotten interested and set up a panel of scientists in New York City. After examination, they declared it impossible. There was no unidentified large primates roaming in American forests undiscovered. With the hoax destination, Life said, no thank you.
See, I don't like that arrogance of nobody else has seen this, so it can't exist. There's always a first time for finding everything. Thank you.
Thank you. It boiled down to many scientists believing that not having the subject to study in a tangible, physical sense denotes it as no more than a fairy tale, and that there was plenty of things that absolutely exist that they could be studying instead of running after tall tales.
He is tall, and he is a tale, but he ain't a tall tale.
Exactly.
He's truth on truth.
And so that's where actually we're going to pick up again next time. We're going to talk about the rest of the Patterson Gimlin film.
Well, I have 2 things to say. 1, I am loving this so far. And 2, Did you leave some time at the end of part 2 to discuss our theories?
Well, so in part 2, we're going to talk about the rest of the Patterson-Gimlin field, and then we're going to dive into the Emerald Triangle's creation. So there's going to be some time there, though.
Okay.
But we can talk
Because
about
I
it
have
now.
a theory.
What's your theory? Tell me
No,
now.
we got to wait till the end. I have to get all the information before I present it. That's what a good scientist does. They don't just make these put out too early, like the COVID vaccine was not, information. They do their research first. So when we wrap this up with my previous knowledge, I will present my findings.
I can't wait. I just cannot wait. Oh, you guys. Well, don't forget to find us on our socials. Jimmy's on the TikToks. Also message us. Like it, share it, repost it. Every little thing you do is like a huge magnifying effect. So check out our merch. Let us know your own Too Close to Home stories. And don't forget to rate and subscribe on all the platforms you listen. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. And don't forget to stay safe. Wait, hold on. How do I do this again? Why do I do this every time?
I don't know. You act like it's been 6 years since we recorded.
I know, and it's not been like that.
Stay safe.
Keep your head on a swivel.
And don't bring it too close to home. Unless it's Bigfoot and he's coming over for a barbecue, saying hi to your friends, only the ones he wants to see him. That's cool. Bigfoot, we can get together. We can put together a invite list. I'm fine with that. I will only send out the invites you approve. You want just me and Jen?
Whatever
That's
you say.
Fine. Jimmy and JJ can't be there? Done.
Say less.
Say less. Bring the girls. They can see you. No one's going to believe them anyways.
I love that. They're going to be not believed anyways. Good.
Exactly.
Well, bye, guys. Bye. So funny. If you enjoyed this episode of Too Close to Home, don't forget to rate and subscribe to us on most platforms. Follow us on our social media at Too Close Home Pod on Facebook, at Too Close Podcast on Instagram, or if you have your own Too Close to Home experience, shoot us your story at tooclosetohome@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.